We've had speak is one of those that we really don't need to introduce. He grew up here in this congregation. Randy has been very active in spreading the word. He's been in foreign countries. He's been working throughout the United States and is currently laboring with the congregation in Eudora, Kansas. And Randy and his wife Beth have been working with the mission work in the Philippines. And so he is going to be giving us a report from that work and giving the lesson this evening. We look forward to that lesson from Brother Randy.
Certainly a great opportunity to be here tonight, and we've been looking forward to this. I scared Jack, I think, when I sent him the PowerPoint for this. It has quite a few slides, but some of them we're going to go through pretty quickly, and some of it is just kind of to give you a sense of what it's like. If you've seen my reports before, you know that I like for you to kind of get a sense of a little bit about the culture and maybe what life is like. It's so different in different places when you travel, and I hear people sometimes will say, I'd like to go with you, and I appreciate that. Someone tonight said something about that. I'm not going to embarrass him and say who it was, but he can tell you if he wants to do that. But, whenever you go to some places in the world, it's almost like going to a third world country, and this is an area of the Philippines that's almost like that, the way some people would look at it. But we went to the Philippines. Beth left in the middle of April, and then I left in the middle of May, exactly 4 weeks later, and then 4 weeks after that, we returned. And of course, the church here has been very helpful in our labors and allowing us to do that. We've had some good support from other congregations in Alabama and then individuals from this area. So we're thankful for that, and we hope that in the future that will continue. Where were we? We were in southern Philippines, and it's maybe hard to really distinguish, but there's 7,000 islands in the Philippines, so it's hard to get them all in one picture that's very big. But you're familiar with Manila and the island of Luzon, which is up in the northern Philippines, and we were on the island of Mindanao in the southern Philippines. And so we flew from Manila down to Davao, which is about 440 miles. And if you may recall that during the time we were there, there was some uprising of a militant Islamic group. They're connected with ISIS. They're the National People's Army, and sometimes they'll get more active than others. I had people writing and saying, we hope you're okay, that you'll stay out of danger and everything, and there was declared martial law. That was on the island of Mindanao. But the area of concern was really in the areas that you can see highlighted with the red. It was kind of central to western central Philippines, and there's a whole mountain chain between where they were and where we were. Although there were a few spotted activities taking place north of Davao, which is just under where the W is on the we were there. So we were going to go down to General Santos City, which is down, I guess it's that one, down here, and we ended up canceling that trip because during the uprisings of the militants, there was a group of about 15 who showed up just north of there and raided a banana plantation, burned the buildings, stole one of the trucks, and destroyed all the rest of the trucks. They didn't kill anybody, but they took off in the direction of General Santos City. And so we thought it might not be wise for an American to show up there about that time, and I didn't want to put others who would be with me at risk, so we decided to postpone that, and that actually created another opportunity that we'll look at in a little bit. But life in the province is a little bit different than what you're used to around here. It's a lot different than what I grew up with. There's the tire swing, but it's a motorcycle tire. I wish I'd have got a picture of Beth's mom swinging on that, because she was swinging, but she got off before I got the camera, and she didn't know I was going to do that. But, that's a pretty simple life, and yes, that's a 9-year-old with a machete. I didn't get a picture when the 7-year-old got a hold of it. Or Abby's 6, I guess, 6. And she picked up the machete. And they'll pick up a machete and start chopping up wood to make a toy. They were carrying around toy machine guns that they cut out of sticks that just happened to be the right shape. You'd have your kids taken away from you in our country for doing that, but that's the way we used to play. And then he was actually cutting these sticks for them to roast these corn cobs, and they were prepared to fire with coconut shells and roasted the corn cobs that had just been picked that day, and on the end of a stick, corn on a stick. I've never eaten them like that, but they seem to like it. And then the local ice cream or candy truck comes by. They bring these candies that are actually made from, I think, coconut milk and something else. I don't even know, in this little frozen snacks. And so the kids will play that. And then one of Beth's brothers, Joji, was climbing up in the tree one time to pick some coconuts. Loma is a fresh young coconut treat that we had. You kind of eat it, drink it at the same time, but they were preparing it that day, and you can see the coconut falling out of the tree. And then the boys were just gathering up and piling them up over here. And then it's coconut water and condensed milk, and you can already start having your mouth water. But in the day-by-day living there is, not only for children but for us, is a little different than what we're accustomed to. In fact, a lot of the houses around the area have electricity. We still don't because of some land issues that we're trying to settle. But we have the generator, and you can see this is inside the kitchen and dining area where the generator is sitting, and we run that for 2 or 3 hours a day. But after one of our Bible studies, one of the neighbors came by with some fresh vegetables and leafy vegetables, and everyone likes that, so they picked them out and bought some, and then had them. We were preparing them, or not we. They were preparing them, and we were eating them. But you can see how it's more of a simple way to look at it. The kitchen floor, Beth went to the Philippines early because her brother was getting married, and she helped them with the preparations for the wedding. And she did some other things in advance of my coming as well. But just before the wedding, the floor of the kitchen collapsed. It was made out of bamboo strips, and it was elevated the same level as the rest of the house. And so the guys just tore it out, and they built a new kitchen. And this is the new kitchen. You can see there's a propane burner, the same burner, and the same table to cook on. Just pile wood on it and pile dirt in there, and then burn wood stakes to cook on. And it's a dirt floor and open fire, and that's the way most of them cook. And here's our in-suite modern bathroom that we have. There's running water. It's a hose that runs from the constantly running spring water that comes out of the ground. We just kind of have it diverted over to the room so we can fill up the buckets. And then there's one of the many uses for the bucket, toilet, but no flush. But anyway, that's fancy living. I took a seat for that toilet, but I forgot to take the screws to hold it down. And you can't buy those in the Philippines. It's not easy to find them. I looked. So anyway, and then this is the property where the family lives, and actually where we do all the teaching, or most of the teaching. The church meets there in the back behind the house. Has been doing that for a couple of years now. It's one of Beth's sisters out there moving the cows around that they feed. She takes care of other people's cows, and then in payment she'll get like every second one that's born. The local religious beliefs, and of course that's what we're most concerned about. The life is simple. The kids don't run around with cell phones playing games all the time. They're creative, and they're active, and they're physically active. They'll run up and down the mountain and everything all day long, but the religious beliefs are what we're most concerned about, and it's a blend of things throughout the Philippines. It's about 80% Catholic in the country, and about 5 or 6% Muslim in the country. And then there's a lot of other things. And in the area where we are focusing on our work right now, you have the native customs, you have the Pentecostals, the Baptists, the Orthodox, which is a Greek Orthodox. I'm not sure what branch that they call it there, but it's the Orthodox, the same as the Russian Orthodox that I've dealt with in Latvia, and then the Catholics, and then this Iglesia Ni Cristo, which is a sect. It's almost a cultish type sect. The structure is very similar to Catholic religion. It was established in 1914 in the Philippines by a Filipino, and you'll see them sometimes in the States if you go to places where there's a high concentration of Filipinos that live. But the buildings that I've seen in the States didn't look anything like this. But everywhere in the Philippines, this is the typical architecture that you'll see, even in the small communities. It may not be this big, but they'll be very extravagant. And that's because the funds that come from all the congregations around the world all get channeled back to there for them to control. And so they are able to use those resources to build some extravagant places. But there are some weird practices. In fact, this religion has been kind of in a crisis because of some immoralities and things in some of the leaders. But that's what we have to deal with. We have to and some of the people that came to our Bible studies were people who have all of these backgrounds. And so we have to be able to be flexible in dealing with the issues that might come up. And as far as the Church of Christ, it's the Upper Santa Maria Church of Christ. Santa Maria is the name of the little town that's about maybe a quarter mile or half mile away from the place where the gazebo where the church is meeting. And so we're just a little bit north of that. And Sherwin is a brother who lives in General Santos City who often comes and preaches. There used to be another congregation that was sending preachers half the time, and then there were 2 or 3 people from this General Santos that were coming up, and slowly they've been involved with some additional works that they're trying to establish, and so some of the resources for preachers, available preachers, have been diverted to other places. Some young men. Sherwin is a education student, so he's learning to be a teacher. But I told him that's a good profession to know if you want to learn how to preach and teach the Bible. You just need to also add your good knowledge of the Scriptures. And he's a young man. He's learning. His lessons aren't really very deep, but he wants to learn, and he has a very good attitude. The other congregation that used to send workers really illustrates one of the challenges that we face in the Philippines, and one of the reasons why I'm kind of staying concentrated in this work here right now, to try to get things well established and then create opportunities to help to influence congregations around the country. Because the young people had asked if they could host a VBS from that congregation. And I said that would be great. I think that would be really good. The young people in the community would benefit from it. The congregation here in Santa Maria would benefit from it. But I said, please don't let them introduce performances. One of the widely practiced things that you find in the congregations of the Lord's Church in the Philippines is what they call presentations, where the groups will stand up and perform for everybody. And I said, please don't introduce that there, because we're trying to teach them, these babes in Christ, to respect and they really got upset. So mad that they just stopped sending somebody. That's how important doing that unbiblical practice is to some people. But this is what we're going to find throughout the Philippines in many, many congregations. And so just the very asking, just not do that, please, was enough to make them mad enough to pull away, which is fine. If that's their attitude, we don't want them there teaching the Bible to somebody. But that's one of the challenges. So we're glad that Sherwin is cooperative in that, and we're glad that he's willing to come. These are a couple of pictures from the worship before I showed up. That when Beth was there, he was teaching in the Bible classes and preaching some Sundays each month. And then Brother Franklin, or June, Franklin Baliva, everyone calls him June, which is Junior. He's local, and he preaches one Sunday a month and teaches the adult Bible class that Sunday. And then Margie, his wife, is one of the teachers for the children. And then their daughter, who's in the pink dress, Mika, she was one that was baptized last year. Now, you couldn't get a good picture of her because the baptism was like 11 o'clock at night and it was dark and I couldn't get a good picture. But that's her in the pink skirt. And then as far as the evangelism efforts that we're doing in the area, of course, there's a lot of children who Beth was able to do some teaching before I got there, and then continued, of course, after I arrived. There was a lot of materials. There was a member of the church there in Eudora who had given some funds specifically to be able to give something to the children. And so Beth was able to get some supplies for the children. And you're talking about people who live on, they might live on $10 or $20 a week, their families. And so, it's not always easy to buy the resources that they need. And so she was able to offer that. And of course, a lot of that would be used in some of the Bible classes as well. But she was distributing those things and helping the children. And then they prepared this thank you card for the one who gave that. But they're very appreciative. There's a lot of children in the different classes each week. You can see there's several. And some classes have more than others. It's an amazing thing that these are children, most of them, parents aren't members of the church, but the children come, and they're allowed to come. But some of these children, if they were not there, they'll go to Iglesia Ni Cristo, and they'll go to the Catholic Church or the Pentecostal Church. But their parents will let them come for the Bible classes, and we're thankful for that. So we might have 15 or 20 children sometime. We might have a great attendance in the worship service, and half of them will be the children, but they stay for the worship whenever they come for the Bible class. And it's a great thing. Beth took some of these posters that we get from house to house, heart to heart, and so she was able to utilize some of them for her classes and teaching about the books of the Bible, and then a lesson about the fruit of the Spirit one day. And Charlotte is our new sister-in-law as of April, and she's one of the children's teachers as well. She's the one in the front there. And then Gigi, she was baptized last year, and she's a very intelligent lady, nice. She's one of Beth's sister-in-laws. And her husband and she were both baptized, and she's one of the people who helps teach the children now. And so we're very thankful for that. But you can see again how many young people there were for the class that day. When I arrived in the southern Philippines, the first day, the evening, we just started singing. Some of the people there like to sing, and it's nothing to hear people go out and doing their chores, and what are they singing? They're singing, what's the songs about? Sowing the seed of the kingdom, or bringing in the sheaves. I think that's one of the most favorite songs. There, but you'll be moving the cows or feeding the chickens or doing this or that, and that's the songs that they're singing. And so we pulled out the songbooks and started singing, and then as the evening went on, then it turned into a Bible study. You can see the difference in the daylight. We were there for quite a while, and I lightened up the picture just a little bit so you could get an idea. So people kept coming, and we had several. And so I was able to do a nice Bible study that evening, just impromptu, because you can't really know when you get to town what's going to happen that first evening, But I wasn't surprised, but it was a great opportunity. And some of these aren't members yet that we've been working on. Other ones are. And several of those are neighbors that live not far away. One of the questions that came up was praying for the dead. And of course, with the Catholic backgrounds, people were accustomed to that practice. And there was question about that, and so I did a Bible study on that. I dealt with that question and other things as well. We had daily Bible studies every morning. We would do Bible studies, and neighbors would come. Sometimes the children would come, sometimes they wouldn't. It was just before school started, before the end of the summer break or the spring break. And so that's a good time of the year for us to go because more opportunities exist. But I did a lesson about faith, like Abraham's faith, to try to help people to understand how you put your faith in God and then act on it. It's not just a lazy faith where you just expect God to provide things for you. But we did the Bible studies on that, and I did a Bible study about the Christian graces, what we call the Christian graces sometimes, from 2 Peter 1. And then I did a lesson on why we need to read the Bible, and is it okay to read the Bible? Can we understand the Bible? What should we expect to get from it? And so we did lessons on that. And we did a lesson, I also used that chart, talking about the books of the Bible, but what they are, what's in the books of the prophecy, what's in the books of the law, what's in the book of Acts, what's in the letters, and who are they written to, and things like that. So, in the Gospels, and so you can see some of the some of the notes. And another lesson was identifying the true Church of Christ. We had questions about this other Iglesia Ni Cristo means Church of Christ. In fact, if you look in the Bible, that expression exactly like that is there. In Romans 16, verse 16, that's the way it's worded. And so it's a little different than in the Spanish. But it's similar, but not exactly. And so people were asking about that. Well, this is the Church of Christ. What's the difference? Well, I did a study about the beginning of the church. And of course, it's very simple in that case because they're proud of the fact that they started in 1914. About a few years ago, and they had the 100th year anniversary, and they had posters all over, banners everywhere. 100 years since we started. Okay, well that makes it a little easier because we talked about the beginning of the church on the day of Pentecost, the first Pentecost after Christ's crucifixion. And so we were able to look at those things and what year that different religious groups began, and contrasting those things, and then other identifying marks about the church. So we were able to do that to kind of clear up some confusion. And then while we were there, we tried to help with some improvements because, well, you can see the table on the right's a little bit rickety. You can't see the ricketiness of it, but you can see that it's kind of a homemade type of a thing, and that we were always worried about one of the legs collapsing for the last couple of years. So we picked up a table when we were in the city and started using that. Also, the the kubo, or the gazebo where the church meets, is this, and it had a leaky, it's only about 3 years old, but it had a leaky roof. And part of it was expanded last year after we returned to help make it possible for all the members to go inside if it rains, because they like to sit outside in front of it. But the additional part was very skimpy on materials, and so it would wiggle. You could sit there on the seat, and if your legs went like that, then the whole thing would rock. And the floor was 3/8-inch plywood with not very many braces between, so it was real weak and soft. And so the church had some resources that they'd saved up, and then we gave some also to help with it. And the guys pulled out the roof, and they made it a lot better. And so we were able to help them add some to what they had. So they replaced the leaking roof, and you can see a nice image of what it looks like now. And reinforced the floor, and also added some side panels to the lower part to prevent what you saw in one of the earlier pictures. During the worship service, the dog sitting there in front of the table. The chickens and the dogs don't run up in there as much now because it's closed off a little bit. And it's nice, too, for the way they've got it fixed up for the teacher. On the first Sunday that I was there, I taught the Bible class, just like I always do when I'm there, and because I wanted to have some more depth to it. The Bible class, I was asked by him, actually, to teach a class about 1 Corinthians 8, because there were some questions about that, and about eating meat offered to idols and things of that nature. And so people had some questions about what that meant, what that text is. So I taught the Bible class about that, but I asked for him to preach. And I asked for Daryl, who was another preacher student, actually, who's from this island, but he's studying on another island. And he's actually got a good Bible knowledge. I asked him to preach because I wanted to hear the lessons and hear what the guys are doing and see how they're teaching and see the kind of lessons that they're getting at the congregation. And so we asked them to preach, and Daryl actually did a good, deep Bible study, a good study, good lesson. Sherwin did a good lesson, but it's a little bit shallow. In fact, he studied about faith, and my lesson about faith, like Abraham's, was taking that to the next level so people could learn the deeper things, not just about having faith, but how does it apply in a person's life. And so we went there. And then I did lessons on the second Sunday Bible class, Why is the Bible Our Authority? And that Sunday, we had some young preachers that were visiting also, and it was good for them because some of them don't have as deep a Bible knowledge. And so I used this kind of a chart like you see on the right there, just to show why we need to read the Bible. And then I was asked to preach on that third Sunday, and I was glad to. I had already had a chance to evaluate the others. So I had a chance to preach that third Sunday that we were in the province, and Rolex was the one who translated for me. And so you can see where a lot of people like to sit outside. You can also see the improvements in the place where the church is meeting there. There's a light bulb above there because at nighttime when we run the generators, now they can have some light out there. But we had pretty good attendance, as you can see. I don't remember getting the count exactly that day. But we had additional efforts. On August the 27th, we did a family seminar type of lessons, and so we used this facility that Beth had discovered. Last year we used a different facility, but they're kind of expensive, and their prices change. Depends on which person you talk to, whether it's the husband or the wife, and they want to charge for this and that, and it's always different. You can't rely on them, and it's rather expensive anyway. So Beth discovered this hall, and she went and talked to the lady who manages this. It's like a resort. They have little gazebos around, and then they have a little kitchen out by the street, and then they have some rooms where you can stay, like a very, very simple, basic motel room. But they have this meeting hall, and she asked about the price, and they told her the price, which was very reasonable. And then she found out that it was going to be for the church, and so she goes, "Well, no, don't pay anything." Well, Beth said, "No, we need to give you something because you have some expenses involved in this because we're using your electricity and stuff." So she settled on, it ended up being something like, I think, the $2.50 or something like that for as long as we needed it during the day. So this is an option that we have now for the future, and including rooms for people to stay. And so since we did not go to General Santos City for the meeting that I was going to do with the church there, we did an additional effort on June the 3rd. And this one, we did two different lessons, and one was on repentance. The other one was on blessings in Christ, and that was really very much evangelistic, trying to help people to understand how to be Christians. And this was a carload that we're loading up in, and it's not really a car. It's like a truck with a cover on it with a bench on both sides, and you can see how they crowd in there. We had to carry the song books, and I have one of those, by the way, here for you to look at if you want to see what they look like. But we have English song books, too, that were there, and Bibles, and the screen for the PowerPoints and things like that. So they were all crowding in there, but when we got there, as the lesson goes, we had about 80 people present. Now, when are we going to have 80 people in Eudora, for a gospel meeting? It may be a while. We're working on it, but we were thankful for that, and a little bit surprised, but very pleasantly surprised. And so we were able to do the lessons there. Some children were there, some adults were there. A lot of people, of course, were non-members. And then that earlier that same day, I did the preacher training. Last year I had done that. There was a group of students who came from the Southern Mindanao Bible College, and I did a lesson. This is a series of short lessons, actually, in this called Declaring the Whole Counsel of God, a Preacher's Challenge. And I talked about what qualifies me to be a preacher and a teacher, and different qualities that we need to look for, and how we need to be willing to take a stand if things aren't going right. And it talked about the importance of how to study and how to preach a balanced preaching and things like that. Well, I had the chance to do it again with these four young men. In fact, one of these young men, the one on the right in the white shirt in the circle right there, had just been baptized just a few weeks before that, and his father is very upset about that because he's big into a denominational church. But we had the chance to do that training, and actually, these two girls right here are connected with the woman who runs this place and owns it, and they came for our last Sunday worship and Bible class for the children. And we thought she was going to come, but she sent them, and there's a good contact there. And some of the others are in the picture that were there for that night. Now the gospel brought some fruit. We didn't have as much as we'd like to have, but we were thankful for the one who did obey the gospel from these efforts. there are about a half a dozen others who we don't understand what they're waiting for. People we've taught, and they keep coming to the Bible studies, but not everyone moves as quick. They've been there last year. This year they come during the times when we're not there. But we keep hoping and praying that they'll obey the gospel. But after that gospel meeting, seminar, if you want to call it that, on that evangelistic lesson, I asked the guys if they would let our nephew stay with them, those young preachers. I thought that might be the thing that would help him. So about 5:30 the next morning, or 5:45, we got a phone call. And so at 6:06 in the morning, he obeyed the gospel. And we're thankful for Kim Lloyd. Call him Kim Kim. Everybody has nicknames over there except for me. But anyway, we're thankful for that. We had other opportunities as well. We went to Dalamuan, which is a village about 3 miles from Santa Maria, and we have some relatives also that live there. A lot of neighbors that would come to Bible studies, and we had a few Bible studies there. And then after one of the classes, and some of the members, Brother Franklin, and you can see him, the one that preaches sometimes there. He and his kids went. Some of them did. And then some of the young preacher students went and helped us by that particular day. We didn't get everybody because some of the people had already left before I took the picture. But we also had a walker for Grandma, Beth's grandmother. As so many of you knew, my uncle Merle passed away several months ago. And my cousin said, if there's anything in the apartment that you need, just go ahead and help yourself, because we've already got everything that's important to us. And so there was a walker there, and we send a box ahead of time every year. We can send a big box full of stuff at a flat rate, and so we send books and Bibles and materials, children's materials and things. And then we put that walker in there, and Beth was showing her how to use it. And so now she's in very poor health right now. We're not sure if we'll ever see her again, and she's never obeyed the gospel still. She's been in several Bible studies, and we hope that one day it'll stick. And we were able to help Toto, who was baptized, and his wife is one of the Bible school teachers for the children, but the wheel on his tricycle, he has a tricycle that he uses like a taxi business, and he might make, $3 a day, something like that, on a good day. But the wheel was cracked, and you couldn't put air in the tire, so for $10 I was able to get him a new wheel and new tire so he could be back in business again. But if you're making $3 a day, feeding a family of 5, it's kind of hard to come up with $10 for an extra wheel. And so we were able to help that. And then on the last Sunday in the Philippines, we decided it was wise to go ahead and get back to Manila so we wouldn't have to worry about any weather problems. And so we worshiped in the morning with the church in Lagro, which is a community up north of Manila. And then in the afternoon, we worshiped with the church in Guadalupe, which is the place where I met Beth on the 2nd day of December 2012. And so we were there, and I preached there. But things have changed a lot. And one of the lessons that I did, I talked about several things that including some of the things we've talked about tonight, of the issues like the performances and things like that. And right after the lesson, the young man who normally would have preached there said, now, we're going to have an intercongregational singing over here on this certain date, and we got to have a group from our congregation prepared to perform there to do their presentation. So it just went in one ear and out the other. And the justification is, that's the way we do it. And as I told him in the lesson, that's not a biblical defense for something. And so we have a lot of work to do. And if we can get a core of a few good, solid Christians who are willing to take a stand and know how to teach it, then we can start to influence other congregations. But I don't know any other way that we can help churches throughout the country without step-by-step doing it. And so we're kind of glad we're kind of in an isolated area. And some of the future efforts, and this will be the last slide. Some people are saying amen. That's a lot of slides, I know, but you saw it kind of gives you a sense of what's happening. But some of our future efforts in the spring is the right time for us to go. Late spring, early summer, because that's the time when the school break is in. So you have teachers that are more free, students that are more free. Some of the students, older students, will go to boarding schools, so they're home. We can teach them. I want to use that hall more extensively to do more evangelism. Now that we know it's available, we can plan it ahead, and we can do a lot of good there. You saw that within a week, we got the word out, and there were 80 people that showed up. Imagine if we planned ahead, and if we could have some additional speakers to come, maybe, and help us with some training and some things like that, preacher training, and the local members training them to also be more evangelistic and also have a better knowledge of the Bible. And then continued efforts to try to help other congregations. We have a few good connections with some congregations that I think we can develop and try to encourage them to grow and be more spiritually mature. And then eventually it may be good to try to have some kind of a preacher training school or a Christian training school there in the area. It's a nice area. It's inexpensive to live there. There's land, there's resources, it's more natural. People can get away from the cities, and it might be a great place to look for that, but that'll have to be future. It's not going to happen next year. But those are the kind of goals that I think we can have. You know, I wish that it was as easy to get people to come today whenever we spread the word in our communities. But it doesn't matter. If you have 1 or 100, if we're doing the work, that's what God wants us to do. And one of the things that I've tried to encourage brethren everywhere I go is to remember that we need to focus on doing the work that God told us to do, and then know that God will give us the reward for doing the work. We're not earning heaven, but we have a work to try to spread the gospel. We can't control how many people react to that in a positive way. We can't control how many people listen to it. All we can do is control whether we do it or not. And if we do that and trust that God will give us the reward, then everything else will take care of itself. Some places you'll have bigger results than others. But the reality is, the same gospel that saved Kim is the same gospel that will save every soul here in this country today, if they'll just turn to Christ. And we have a great example, a recent example of that. Someone who heard the gospel and appreciates what it says. And we're so thankful for that. I wish other people would be open. But when Christ came, He taught us to go into all the world and preach the gospel. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have gone to this area where the church did not exist and try to help establish a congregation there, and hopefully the beginning of something really grand in the future. If there are those tonight who, we talked about the lessons that we were teaching there about how to live the Christian life. Peter talked about adding to your faith the virtue, and the virtue knowledge and self-control, and patience and godliness and brotherly kindness and love. And these are the things that will characterize the mature Christian. But if that's not what your life is like as a Christian, then we hope that you would make some changes tonight. And if you've never obeyed the gospel that would allow you to be put into Christ, follow the example of that good young man that we saw there, and be baptized into Christ tonight. God will welcome you and transfer you into His kingdom through the blood of His Son. You just give your life to Him, and then you can be involved in trying to help spread the gospel, to help save others, whether here or anywhere else that you have an opportunity to go. But it's hard to bear fruit for God if you're not one of the fruit that's born for God. If you need to become a Christian tonight or be restored as a Christian who may have fallen into sin, we're going to give you the invitation now. Won't you please come? All together we stand and sing.